From ContainerDays Hamburg, this video is proudly presented by DAX IT.
Hi, I'm Mario. I am currently, for this talk, I'm a CNCF ambassador, and I'm also a co-chair for the newly founded Tech Operational Resilience. And I have together with me two folks from the CNCF and Robert.
Hi, my name is Robert Kielty, and I work on the CNCF projects team. And I think in this talk we're going to talk about how we're going to do a little section on how we onboard projects into the CNCF.
Hi, I'm David Palilonis. I work in the CNCF to help bring in new members to the CNCF, and I'll talk a little bit about why companies join and what that means and looks like. Thank you.
So, 10 years of CNCF. Good that, now the slides are not working. Yay, it's always the same. 10 years CNCF. What is CNCF? CNCF is a non-profit organization, and it's basically about making the cloud ubiquitous, and it started 10 years ago. That's why we look at the past decade. And the CNCF basically grow over time to one of the biggest branches of the Linux Foundation. So in the past 10 years, we had millions of code commits. We had hundreds of thousands of people who are contributing to those projects, basically across most of the globe. So we have contributors in all of the world, and we have over 230 projects. Some of them have been archived. But we have still over 210 projects which are active projects inside of the CNCF. So when we basically look at it, we make the whole baseline of the IT world inside of a cloud native foundation that started with a small, tiny commit a couple of years ago with only 40,000 lines of code, which was basically when the first Kubernetes commit was made 11 years ago. And this basically started the whole initiative. So when we have a look at the timeline, we obviously have our flagship project with Kubernetes, which started everything, but you can even go back and see like where it leads to this cloud native approach. So everything, when we go back, we started with virtualization of hardware, then we moved on into infrastructure as a service, then we had the first cloud providers with platform as a service, and eventually it moved to open source because everyone saw that it doesn't make sense if I just do everything by myself, because probably other people have the same problems as us, and the solution is that basically let's work on those stuff together. And then eventually 2013 containers came along, and someone had the great idea that, hey, maybe containers are good, but maybe I want to run more than one or two containers, so I need a software for this. And then basically 1 year after, it started with Kubernetes, and then afterwards the Cloud Native Foundation was founded. And you see, especially when you look at the development in the future, small companies like OpenAI 8 years ago already gave a presentation about running AI workload on top of Kubernetes clusters. So that's not a new thing. And also like those AI platforms using the foundation of an open and open source world to lay their groundwork on top of it. But it's not only the CNCF. So we still also have things like the Linux Foundation, which is on top of the CNCF. And they have also a lot of projects and initiatives in every sector that you can basically imagine. And this brings to you the largest environment for projects and software that is owned by more or less the public. And the benefits of those non-profit organizations are that it supports projects with resources, it supports projects with marketing, and the most important thing that most of the people don't really realize, it also supports them with legal support. because there are legal threats against open source projects which need to be mitigated. And this basically brings you the security also for the industry to use those open source projects, because we can be sure that if there is someone going to sue an open source project, that there's enough entity behind it to neglect those claims and basically have a neutral ground to work on. And it's always together with companies. So most of the big maintainers of projects are direct competitors, and they're working on the same software base. And I think that's the great thing. And if we look at the CNCF on a global Linux scope, is what is the biggest open source project in the world? Anyone? Linux. Yeah, Linux is the biggest open source project. What's the second biggest open source project in the world? Kubernetes. Kubernetes is now the second biggest open source project in the world. And I know it's tiny, but you see those small black black arrows. Each of those black arrows are CNCF projects, and all of these projects are Linux Foundation projects. And you see how many of the big projects inside of the Linux Foundation are actually CNCF projects, and they are part of the CNCF. And if we look in detail at those projects, we have a ton of projects. So we have 3 stages, which is graduated, incubating, and sandbox. And projects basically move through those levels to become more reliable and to use for companies. Of course, we also have the early stage with sandbox projects. And now there's a question like, how do I get my project into the CNCF, or what is the way of getting a project into the CNCF? And therefore, there is basically a really straightforward onboarding process on how to get projects into the CNCF.
So what I wanted to talk about here was that we have this idea of project maturity, and in that idea of project maturity, we have the notion of a sandbox project. And one of the things I wanted to get across to you all was the amount of work and effort it takes to get into the CNCF sandbox. And the other thing that I wanted to just cover off was how that works, who's involved in that process, and then where all of this happens. If you are interested in donating a project to the CNCF, you can actually follow along at home and see what projects have done before to complete through this process. So in our model, we have this idea here from Crossing the Chasm, where on the left-hand side there you have the sandbox, and in that sandbox, this sort of bell curve indicates how end users view these projects and how end users take on adopting these projects. And that idea of sandbox is for early adopters, and graduated projects are for everyone. Once all of the innovators and the techies have taken all of the risk at the start, is what we have based our model on to an extent. But what I wanted to do was talk about projects adoption, and what I want to do is kind of effectively do a live demo. So before we started this talk, as a member of the projects team, this is something that I would work on with a lot of my colleagues on a pretty much a day-to-day basis. And I have one view of how projects get onboarded, and my view of how projects get onboarded pertains to an issue and a set of tasks that project maintainers have to take on, that CNCF staffers have to take on, and that in conjunction together, both of us work together on certain tasks. So the overall process to get a project accepted into the sandbox is actually covered on the README here on this GitHub repo. So if we were to page down through that, the process of pitching and proposing a project to the CNCF is covered here. And we do all of our work on this in the open. So we're advocates for open source work, and this, in fact, is an open source process. So if we were to, so we have 2 different views of this. So my view is on the issues. If we were to look at, let's look at your view first that you showed me earlier on.
Yeah, so there's something called the Technical Oversight Committee inside of the CNCF. It's a voted board of individuals who basically take the technical oversight across all of the projects. And below this are the technical advisory groups. And we also have a sub-project which is basically for the reviewing process of projects. And what we do from our point of view is we have a project creates an issue, then the issue is created and it wants to apply for how to get into the CNCF. And I need to find the one that I worked on. So basically, I reviewed a project which is called KSCTL. They made their, hey, I want to get into the CNCF. They say that there are our tools, this is our website, this is our roadmap. And basically what then happens, because we do this all in our spare time, there's nothing happening from May to June because people were out. And then we basically assign this to folks who are then reviewing this. So I reviewed this together with Josh. So this is also the approach for open source. It's always more than one person reviewing this so that there's not like a single opinion doing this. And for example, it's also that people who could directly work for competitors. So for example, Josh is working for Red Hat, I'm working for Kubernetes. We are competitors, but we still did the review together. And then what we did is we did a technical review. So where we answered like the scope, the planning sessions of how we understand the project, what the project does, and yada, 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 yada. And then we basically raise questions. And we also highlight risks. For example, there's a name conflict that might be an issue, especially when you look at legal. Then we basically also have like an idea of what you could do in the project to mitigate those risks. And what then happens is that then the maintainer of the project is answering those questions. And once those questions are answered, it goes back to the TOC, and the TOC then will vote on, hey, can the project join the CNCF or not?
So post acceptance of the project into the sandbox, then we have the sandbox issue. And if I can just let me just see if I might get you to drive actually because this is your laptop. So when you look at the issues on this repo, we're effectively using labeling to determine at what phase in the process that a project is. But once accepted, issues that are labeled project onboarding are an issue that tracks all of the tasks that need to be carried out in order to formally get them into the sandbox. So I encourage people to look at this and basically, you're going to have to drive, but could you just page it out for me? To look at those tasks, we divide them into three sections where there's tasks for the project maintainers, there's tasks for staff, and there's collaborative tasks. But if you want to learn how to donate a project to the CNCF, this is a great place to do it, because working through those tasks, you'll see the things, the roles and the obligations that the project has to conform with. And these tasks often link into the CNCF's charter and links into our policies. And this is the starting point for extending the governance on the project in order to get it from sandbox, out of sandbox, into incubating and onto graduated. So this is a good place to learn about how the CNCF works and how the CNCF provides that value of evaluating project maturity for the end user community. And this is useful not only for people who are looking to donate projects to the CNCF, but also if you're a contributor and you're looking for a project to work on. If you were to go to the Kubernetes project right now, there's a long line of people who are trying to get code into that. But if you were starting out your contribution journey and wanted to go to a less full swimming pool, so to speak, you could go to a sandbox project and offer your services and offer to become a contributor. And in this space, you will see who the project maintainers are, you'll see what the project is about, you'll see links to all of the resources, and you'll see them grow as a project. And much easier it is to get in at the ground floor rather than a project that is 10 years old. The other reason I'd suggest to people to play along at home is if you're an end user and you want to have your finger on the pulse of what's coming online and coming into the community in terms of projects, that's a good thing also to do. I have a few links on the following page. This is the start of the journey for a project in terms of complying with, CNCF maturity and project maturity guidelines and recommendations. We have two applications that really drill down to the detailed level of what that means for a project. Local to the CNCF, we have Clo Monitor, and if you follow the link for Clo Monitor, that's effectively a static code checker that looks for specific artifacts relating to filling out legal obligations, filling out legal statements, who the adopters are, etc., etc. And you can see the progress of a project over time and complying with those responsibilities. And then even more detailed again is LFX Insights. And the LFX Insights page is just a super detailed view of how a project is succeeding in the open source space. And I'd strongly recommend that you look at those two if you want to. It goes, the detail into which LFX Insights in particular goes into, takes vibe checking a open source repo to the ultimate level. You'll know where you stand when you're looking at a CNCF project when you go through LFX Insights. The final thing I always pitch when I talk to sandbox project maintainers, I always encourage them to look at LFX Mentorship. It's a great program to do. It's effectively an open source internship that's paid for a mentee. If you're not aware of this program, I'd encourage you to take a look at that. And anytime I talk about CNCF, I mention that program. It's a fantastic thing to do as a mentor. You volunteer to your time to bring somebody on as a contributor to a project. And having done it myself once, I absolutely learned so much in teaching about a project that I wasn't actually working on. But for the mentee, it's potentially a life-changing 12 weeks where they learn how to contribute to an open source project. So that's pretty much all I have, Mario.
Yeah, and we mentioned one body already of the CNCF. So this is just one body of the whole structure of the CNCF. We also have the governing board. The governing board is basically consisting of the members of the CNCF. So any company who is in the CNCF could potentially end up having a chair in the governing board. This depends on the level of where you will join the CNCF. And as mentioned, we also have the technical oversight committee, and beneath the technical oversight committee, we have the technical advisory groups. There are currently 5 of those. They have been re-established, and they provide project with and also end users with the guidance of white papers or how the structure works and how basically folks work together with projects and get insights to choose like what is our architecture that we want to go forward, or when projects are struggling with governance or help to make design decisions, then those technical advisory groups come into place. We also have the end users to get feedback from end user companies directly into those projects, and this is basically the end user tabs and also the technical advisory board from the end users. Because I'm in one of the technical advisory groups, just a quick overview. So we have developer experience, we have workload foundations, we have infrastructure, we have operational resilience, and we have security and compliance. And all of those operate basically together. So this is not like this is a strict separation. We also work on tasks together with anyone. And you might want to take a picture of this. So basically this tells you which tag is the relevant part that you want to reach out, or if you're interested, we are always looking for help in those tags to basically solve problems or to write down tasks. For example, we are now currently writing in an initiative the how would a good release process for projects look like? And obviously, if the open source projects have a good release process, you can adopt those release processes to your company as well. Speaking of how to get into the CNCF, David will tell you a little bit more about CNCF membership.
Thank you. So thank you again. Really, everyone. Okay, sorry. Everyone here, you're already a part of this community. You're already writing code. You're already approving pull requests. You're maintaining the projects. You're attending the events like this one. These next few slides will talk about how CNCF membership is a way for your company to amplify the work you're already doing, and so that you can move, your companies can move from a consumer of the projects to more of a leadership, ecosystem leadership role in helping to shape where cloud native is heading in the next 10 years. So this is our kind of a spectrum of engagement of companies. All of your companies are somewhere on this, all of your on the spectrum. Obviously, at the consumer level, these are companies that rely on the projects. We talked about how Kubernetes is the largest open source project in the world. Obviously, most companies are using it somewhere, but they're not, at the consumer level, they're not really putting any kind of input. They're just using the projects. At the participant level, it's really companies how they contribute code upstream, how they send employees to these events, encourage collaboration with a wider open source community. Obviously, the fact that most of you are here at the event, your company is somewhere on this level, most likely at the participant, building technical credibility through your contributions and your activities. At the leader level, really, it's how the companies are recognized for their role in the cloud native. So what do I mean by leader? If you're a vendor company, it can mean employing the maintainers that Mario talked about earlier. So many of these large projects, the maintainers are from potentially competitors in the market. So the fact that the vendors are actually employing those, helping to maintain the projects, and driving those innovations through contributions. For end user companies, it can mean running these technologies at massive scale across all of your businesses and sharing your lessons learned, like folks are doing this week at KubeCons, and then reference architectures with the whole wider community. These companies, for every company, realistically, it can mean also donating your projects, like Robert just talked about, be able to the wider CNCF community. And of course, why I'm talking to you, many companies choose membership as a means to support themselves on the journey to leadership. CNCF serves as kind of that guide to help organizations navigate the aspect of the ecosystem and leveraging that for their business strategy. Membership formalizes commitments. It provides visibility to the wider community and allows companies to represent their enterprise priorities through CNCF's technical marketing channels. So, I'm going to go through here on why companies join. Go through on this, focus on some reasons on why companies and why I've seen in my role in bringing in new members. First, membership is a seat at the table. As you saw, and we talked about a little bit, we have the members run the foundation through the governing board. So all of our members have an opportunity to both run for a seat on the board and vote for seats on the board as well. They have a direct voice through the board that for the conversations that shape the future cloud native ecosystems through both that board, but also by communicating their experiences through our technical marketing channels, through our online webinars, through our YouTube channels, through our blog. So each of our members have an opportunity to really talk about the work they're doing and talk about that leadership. End users also have a role through the end user groups and the end user tab they talked about to help ensure the enterprise needs for security, compliance, and scale. Second, companies must protect what they depend on. Membership directly helps the sustainability and security of the cloud-native infrastructure they rely on. End users reduce the risk and expense by sustaining the projects through your production workloads. Vendors ensure the stability of the open source cloud-native projects your commercial offerings are built on. Third, companies raise their profile by raising the profile of their engineers. So who are doing the work, who are carrying the water and chopping the wood, and puts your company on the map as a leader in the cloud native ecosystem. Finally, it is intelligent investments. It's instead of duplicating effort on undifferentiated infrastructure, members are pooling their resources and allowing their teams to focus on building what really differentiates their business. It's about moving from a passive reliance to community engagement and leadership. So what is the strategic impact of that membership? It helps companies expand opportunity. Cloud-native technologies open the door to new solutions, services, and business models. End users can accelerate digital transformation by opening new internal capabilities or on observability, security, and automation. Vendors can expand addressable markets by aligning with the de facto standards and building new services on top of them. It helps shape industry platforms. Kubernetes, Envoy, Prometheus, and now OpenTelemetry are the basis of modern infrastructure, and members are part of the conversations that guide their evolution. It helps reduce costs as shared development lowers duplicative research and development on undifferentiated infrastructure. End users avoid wasted efforts on maintaining internal tools by learning from other members on best practices and use of CNCF projects. Vendors share the burden of developing and maintaining foundational components so their teams can focus on that differentiated value. Finally, it helps unlock new markets as cloud-native projects drive growth in security, AI/ML, and edge computing. This can be indirect by improving internal efficiencies, allowing your developers to innovate and provide more value to your both internal customers and external customers, or more directly for vendors by creating new commercial opportunities for managed services, consulting, and SaaS offerings. This is really how your company has moved from a consumer to being a recognized leader in the cloud-native space. I'll leave you with this final thought. As shown on the banner here, you in the audience, the developers, the maintainers, the tag members, you are already shaping CNCF projects every day, and that is what is most important. Membership ensures your company shapes the wider ecosystem around the projects. Here's my if you want to definitely connect this week, I'm here all week. I've got I'm on the CNCF Slack. If you're not on the CNCF Slack, you can scan the QR code to be on the Slack channel. I'm also on LinkedIn. So please come grab me. Let's make sure your company is helping lead the CNCF in its next 10 years. Martin?
Yeah, and also, you get all of the information about what happens in the community, about community.cncf.io. There you can also find the ambassador program, and obviously it's an open source project, and we follow a code of conduct. TLDR is be excellent to your fellow maintainers, contributors, members of the community, because there's no way why we should tolerate any background from people that is being attacked. So basically, be excellent to each other. And also the core principles, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So open source, it can take time and will take time. Always assume positive intent, because most of the communication will happen asynchronously. It will be written. And we all know how messages look like. Messages can look like offensive, although they are not offensive, because most of the people who are contributing to open source are not native English speakers. So that's also another barrier that we cross. If you look for jobs in the open source world, there's also from the CNCF a job board, which is called getjobs.dev, where you can find jobs that have open source contributions as part of it. And you should contribute as an individual to open source, because it will elevate you in your career. And the most important saying, and I will skip to a lot of stuff, is open source maintainers owe you nothing. So if your company is using open source products, and I bet every company in the world is using open source products because they are relying on it, they get financial benefit out of using open source. And if you don't use, and the assumption that companies have is like that open source maintainers owe them anything, but that's not the truth. They do this in their spare time. They do this for free. They usually, some of them get paid, most of them aren't. And also, even if they get paid, they still answer messages at 1 a.m. in the morning or something like this in an open source chat. And to basically require from them that they should do something for you is the wrong approach. The right approach for every company in the world should be, I should make developer resources free to help contribute to open source because my business is relying on open source. That's a business benefit that you get. And this is my personal opinion and not the one from the CNCF. So just to clarify on this part. We are coming to an end. Basically, come, join open source. I know the barrier is sometimes a little bit high and people fear how to get into open source, but as Robert already mentioned, attending a meeting, and David also mentioned it, attending a meeting, attending a conference, that's already a contribution to open source. So basically there you can take small steps to get into open source, but it's important for you that you take those small steps. And I never met a person who is not friendly in the open source community and wants to help you. So take the leap and come and join open source. Thank you.
We have one license-related question. It's there for 20 minutes already. Maybe it has been answered due to the presentation.
Yeah, do you have an own open source license as well? What kind of license are acceptable? We use Apache too.
Yes, we do. The CNCF has in their charter a statement of their open source license policy. So it's complex because there are so many licenses involved. As part of governance, we have codified in FOSSA and SNEAK what licenses for third-party libraries that we're happy with, and it's one of the onboarding steps when we onboard into the Sandbox project. So to answer the question, if you were to look at the onboarding issues and look for parts where I'm talking to people to onboard them onto FOSSA and SNEAK, we would get you to the third-party license policy in the CNCF. There's about 5 or 6 paragraphs there, but that's available on our charter.
And also, there are sometimes license exceptions. So there are sometimes votes for specific projects to have license exceptions that needs to pass through the governing board.
Thank you. I think that's it for the questions. Thank you again. I think Mario, Robert, and David are still at the venue for the next days. You can find them probably at Kubernetes or somewhere else now at lunch. Thank you. See you at the Kielty session after the lunch.
From ContainerDays Hamburg, this video is proudly presented by DAX IT.